Hey everyone, thanks for watching the tutorial on mounting an autographed Michael Myers knife. This video is sort of a sequel to a video I did a couple of years ago called Mounting an Autographed Machete for all you Friday the 13th fans out there. If you have any interest in watching that video, you can just click on my nick, which is highlighted in blue, and scroll down the page. It's about halfway down or so, or you can do a YouTube search and just search for Mounting a Machete, and I think it's like the second video down, something like that. Anyway, on to today's project. Today we will be mounting an autographed kitchen knife by our Michael Myers of choice. This one happens to be from Nick Castle, the original Michael Myers in 1978. Nick is a great guy. He's pretty rare, and I had the opportunity to meet him in Indianapolis in 2012. You get the opportunity, super guy. Anyway, this project today, the degree of difficulty is going to be ramped up a little bit compared to the machete video. It's a little bit more advanced, but I think I've laid it out straight. It's pretty straightforward. It's just a few more steps that's involved. Without bragging, this is a pretty professionally looking mounted piece. It looks as good as taking it and having it done somewhere. And if you have it professionally mounted, you were looking anywhere from $80 to $140, and you'll be able to do this for a fraction of the price. But in order to get professional results, especially if you have more than one knife to do, you're going to want everything perfectly laid out and they all look identical. In order to do that, we're going to want to make a template to mount the knives with. And there's quite a bit of work that goes into making the template, but once you get the template made, you can just knock them out one after another. So the list of supplies that you're going to need for today is an extra knife, because you don't want to be messing around with a nice autograph knife and smudge the autograph. I would recommend getting a knife that has a flat handle instead of a rounded handle, or a rounded handle on the sides. It's going to make it a lot easier to mount. You'll also need a shadow box, and this one is an 11 by 14. And if you're not sure what a shadow box is, it's basically a picture frame, but as you can see, it's about 2 or 3 inches deep. It allows you to mount three-dimensional items inside the thing. Next thing you're going to need is strips of wood. These things are about 1/4 inch thick, about an inch wide, and they was 2 foot long. This is just a leftover scrap piece because it's a lot easier to show on camera. You will need that. You will need floral foam. Floral foam is foam that you would use to make floral arrangements, that type of thing. You want to make sure you use floral foam. It's green. You want to make sure you use the floral foam instead of regular styrofoam, because floral foam, you can make indentations in this thing really easily, and that's what we want it for. We want to be able to make a nice indentation, and the indentation stay in the foam. So I recommend using floral foam. This thing was not this dimension, as you can tell by the seam. It was an odd shaped piece, and it wasn't the right size for me, so I had to cut it in half and glue it together. They do make a glue for that, actually. Who knew, right? You're also going to want a mat. And a mat is what you would see inside of a pitcher, mostly. It's the border that goes around the pitcher. You can go to any arts and crafts store that does mountings of pitchers and things like that. You can have them cut the mat for you. Let them know how you want everything laid out. For me, I wanted the pitcher at the bottom and the knife at the top, of course. And then you can actually put all this stuff together, but they will cut these for you. They don't cost too much. You'll also need a blank. The blank is basically how this whole thing starts out, and it's got all your dimensions and everything that you're going to need. And this is a very important piece. It all starts from here. So that's going to be very important. It's just sort of a thick cardboard to work with. You will also need a tube of silicone. I recommend GE silicone personally. That's sort of my favorite. I've used it before. Works really great. You will also need a package of small flathead wood screws. These are 3/8 wood screws. I do recommend the flathead on those. And last but not least, you're going to need a small package of nails. These nails are, I don't know, what, a couple of inches long, something like that. They have a nice size head on them, and that's sort of important when it comes to the use of those. But that's a list of everything that you're going to need. So now that we know what we're going to need, let's get to work and let's make our template so we can mount our knives. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. The first thing you want to do is measure everything out on a blank. A blank is going to be the size of your mat board that you put inside the shadow box. It's going to serve as a guide, if you will. And what you want to do is you want to measure everything out and make sure it's laid out perfectly the way you want it. In my case, I wanted the knife up the top and a 4x6 picture down below it. But you want to make sure it's laid out perfect because it all starts from this point and it's very crucial. Next, what you're going to want to do is we're going to take some silicone and we're going to glue the knife to the blank. I prefer GE silicone. I've used it before when I was mounting machetes and it works really well for me, so I kind of like that personally. But what you want to do is put a bead of silicone down the knife handle. It doesn't have to be perfect. Nobody's really going to see this. But after you do that, you want to put the knife onto your blank and mash it down really good and firm. Make sure the knife lines up with your lines on your blank to make sure the knife stays perfectly straight at a right angle. I also recommend putting an ink pen under the knife blade to take the pressure off the handle while it dries. And what it's going to do is it's just going to keep the silicone from pulling off. You really want to give this whole thing 24 hours to dry before you do anything with it. But while the knife is drying, we'll go ahead and move to the next step. With the knife drying, we can go ahead and start making the border for our template. These are strips of wood that you can get at any arts and crafts store. I found these at Hobby Lobby, and they're about an 1/8 inch thick, but about 2.5 feet long. What you want to do is you want to measure the length of your blank with each strip of wood. Measure it just a little bit short than the actual blank is, about an 1/8 to a 1/16 inch. But you want to make sure you do it to all 4 sides. After you have all 4 sides measured, we're going to cut them to size. If you don't have a miter saw and you have to cut them by hand, you might want to consider cutting the boards a little shorter than an 1/8 inch short if you can't cut an exact straight line. Once again, nobody's going to see it. It's just part of the template to help your autograph knife look a little bit more professionally done. The next thing that we're going to do is you want to get a package of nails. And the 2 main things to remember about the nails are, 1, you don't want the nail longer than your foam is thick, and 2, you want to make sure that the nail has a decent sized head on it. You don't want a finishing nail. You want something that has an actual head on the nail, and there is a reason for that. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to get a drill bit. You want the drill bit to be slightly larger around than the nail, but not too big. After you've selected the drill bit, you're going to drill about 3 or 4 holes in each board that you just cut. The hole should be large enough that you'll be able to push the nail through the board by hand, but you just want a snug fit. You don't want it to go through too easily. With that done, we're going to move to the next step and we're going to actually start putting things together. After you've given the knife 24 hours to dry, what we're going to do is flip the blank upside down and put it onto the foam. After the blank looks like it's fairly center of the foam, you want to push the knife straight down into the floral foam. You want to push it until the knife is completely sunk down into the foam and the blank sits flatly on top of the foam like it's just sitting there, like you see here. Next, take the strips of wood and run a bead of glue down each strip. Do it down the full length of the board, and after you have glued it, place it on the outside of the blank. Leave about a 1/16 inch of a gap, which is not a lot, all the way around your blank, just in case your mats are not cut completely square. It basically gives you a little bit of play in case something's not perfect. After you glue each board down, take the nails and push them through the holes that you drilled earlier. Do this all the way through the foam and go all the way around the board. It's just going to keep everything from moving on you.
After you have glued and nailed the boards into place, you can now safely remove the blank from the foam. Once it's removed, you should have a perfect indentation of your knife inside the foam, as you see here. Now is where things start getting a little bit more tricky. You want to measure how far from the edge and how far from the top of the blank your knife handle is. In my case, it was about 3/4 of an inch over from the edge and about 1 inch from the top down. You want to take these measurements and flip your blank over and mark those same measurements on the back side. This is going to tell you exactly where the handle of your knife is. After we know where the handle is, you want to take a small drill bit and drill 2 holes into the knife handle. With the pilot hose drilled, we're ready to move on. Okay, so let's do a trial run and make sure everything works correctly. Take the spare knife and pull it off the blank, because you don't need it there anymore. If you look closely, you'll see that the floral foam, although it works really well for something like this, gets really messy really easily. The last thing you want is bits of floral foam all over your nice autographed knife. So what you want to do is take a piece of saran wrap and cover the floral foam. Then take the knife and put it down inside the indentation of the floral foam. Remember, the knife should set flush down inside the foam. After that, put the blank on top of the knife and drill your 2 pilot holes that you have marked into your blank. After you've drilled the 2 pilot holes, remove the blank and make sure that the holes are in the center of the knife handle. If you're satisfied with the placement of the pilot hose, you've done an awesome job, and we can move on to actually mounting the knife. Take your autographed knife and put it inside the indentation of the foam. Next, take the mat board and flip it upside down and set it into the template. After you have done that, set your blank in on top of that mat. Then we're going to drill our 2 pilot holes again. With the pilot holes drilled, you can remove the blank, but make sure you leave the mat inside the template. Next, get a package of wood screws. I recommend using a flathead screw so that it will sit inside the shadow box nice and flush. Remember, we're going to be putting screws into a knife handle, so you want to make sure that the screw itself is not too long, because you're going to have a piece of metal halfway through that handle and it's not going to go in very easily. The ones I used were 3/8 of an inch thick and they worked quite nicely for me. But what you're going to do is take the 2 screws and screw them into place, go through the mat into the knife handle. When the screws are in place, guess what? You have just mounted your first autograph knife. Very gingerly, lift the mat up out of the template, and here's what it's going to look like. Now you're ready to place your knife inside the shadow box.
Well, there you are. That's how I did it. It is sort of a long, drawn-out process, I know, but the end results look amazing. I really don't think you'd be disappointed if you tried this project. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to post on the wall or send me an email. Email's on the bottom of the screen. I do check the email a little bit more often than the wall posts because I don't get notified of the wall posts for whatever reason. If you don't understand something or you get confused by something I did in the video, let me know. I'll be more than happy to try to break it down and give you a little bit more detail as to what took place. Anyway, thanks for watching.